Ahlan wa sahlan, Mauritania. Well, can you believe it? We are now up at measure 10. This is amazing. I know. You're so excited you wish there were more measures. Well, you're going to really enjoy this one, and trust me, you'll be glad you made it this far. So, let's get right to it. You know what our goal is today. Of course, obviously, we're going to do all the forms of measure 10, and frankly, you know by now that's going to be easy. Because, what do we always tell you? Right. If you paid attention to the previous lessons, particularly 7 and 8, this is going to be the exact same thing. So you just need to know what the prefix is. We're sticking on the beginning, and then you can roll with it, right? I know you're ready to roll. So let's look at our basic pattern. Here, what do we have? Yes. Of course, this is our 3 basic letter root. Fa'ala. This would be our measure 1. So to make measure 10, whoa. Now notice, this is the longest measure that we have. 3 letters we're putting on the front. And it has this distinctive ista prefix. Now you've already seen a bunch of words so far that have ista in front of them. Istaikiz, right, to wake up. Istaham is to shower. And you'll see many more as we go on. Right, we will learn that the living room of a house is ghurfat istiqbal. Okay, so you might wonder why we have these ista words. Okay, so this is measure 10. It has this distinct ista pattern. It is the longest pattern of all, but it's pretty simple. It just goes on the front, and then we continue to conjugate everything normally. Everything else is going to work out pretty normal, except it's very important to note where the sukoons go here in terms of the pronunciation. Okay, so, of course, this is ista, so the seen has a sukoon on it. So don't say isata or something like that, right? Ista. Just think of this, ista. Burn this into your mind. Go ahead. Do it. Do the Viking, not the Viking, the Vulcan mind meld. Yeah, the Viking mind meld is performed with a battle axe, actually. An early form of surgery. Anyway, okay, ista. Ista. Okay, so obviously it's going to have this. The second point, notice we always have a sukoon over this first root letter, which basically means that this letter becomes the end. Think of it this way, it becomes the end of this syllable here. So in this case, istafala, right? Istafala. So this one becomes an ending consonant. So remember that there is a sukoon here. If you remember this, your pronunciation is good. Don't say istafa'ala. That's a common beginner mistake, which of course you wouldn't want to make. Alright, so now you know how to make it. We're going to get some practice on pronunciation of this because it is very important. But now you want to know the meaning. What does this thing mean? Okay, so measure 10 has 2 distinct meanings, and oftentimes it means both of these at once, but you will see as we go. It means either this, to seek whatever measure 1 is, or to consider something, whatever the measure 1 is. And since these are related, to seek may be to look for something, you consider this. So these 2 can be related. You will see some examples. Now, of course, remember, we're up at what number now? We're up at measure 10. And as we went on, you notice the measures do get progressively more complex in their meaning, right? So measure 1 are like common everyday street words. Measures 8 and 10, these are like, you know, PBS, NPR kind of words. So you would expect the meaning here to be somewhat more elevated. Nonetheless, measure 10s are very common. You've seen them in things like to wake up, to shower, living room. Okay, these are fairly common words, so you do need to know these. Okay, so it can mean both of these things. Well, you say, let's see some examples. Now, the context should make it clear what we're talking about. Let's take this, for example. This root, gharaba, means to be strange. You probably will never see this verb, but you do see the adjective that goes with it. Gharib, gharib is strange. And this is also, of course, where we get the noun, right, al-gharb, which means the West. But think of it, what was the West in classical Arabic times, right? It was the land of the strange, the strangers. So anyway, the word gharib means strange. Okay, so knowing that this root has to deal with strange, here's our measure 10. Obviously, you can recognize it's measure 10. Ista, all right, so this is a measure 10. So istaghrab, remember, of course, this first root letter is always going to have a sukoon on it. So it's an ending consonant. Istaghrab. Istaghraba. Okay, so istaghraba, okay, if this is to be strange, well, which one of these you think it's going to be? Right, the more likely is this. So, istaghraba is to consider something strange. Wow, I find that very weird. Okay, I mean, obviously, in like, as we've seen with previous measures, I mean, don't try and overthink this and read some, really bizarre meaning. Go with the one that makes sense. Okay, so here's an example to consider something strange. And we could say that something, right, that one group of people does, another group of people, yastaghrab dhalik. So, whatever things we do. Okay, so in America, we drive on parkways and park on driveways, and we could say the Arabs yastaghrabun dhalik. They find that strange. Okay, here's another example. Okay, fahama, fahama. Fahama is to understand. Yafham, tafham, ma fahamtu. So if this is to understand, istafhama, all right, easily you can see this is ista. And of course, what do you see about measure 10s? They tend to be long, right? They tend to be longer words. So, go back to our meanings. What do you think it's going to be? This one would be hard to even imagine what that means. So, to seek to understand, well, how do you seek to understand? You do this. You inquire, you ask, you investigate. And so that's what that means, istafhama. Okay, we'll give you one more here. Now, those are cases where it's clear which meaning is intended. A lot of times, the two meanings are going to overlap. Here's an example. Thamar is fruit. Thamara, the verb, does mean to be fruitful, but far more common is to see this fruit or profit, benefit. This is what thamar is. Okay, so this is actually a very common Arabic verb, far more common than this one. Istethmara. So, what are we doing in istethmara? Istethmara means this, to invest. Okay, well, what do you do when you invest? Why do you bother to invest? You're trying to get profit. You hope that it'll bear fruit. But also, you don't just, hopefully you don't invest in like crazy companies, right? Cosmetics for dogs or something like this. Okay, right, you also, something you consider to be fruitful. And so you can see where istethmara has both meanings. And now what you can probably also deduce from this example, right, the meanings aren't always going to be automatically clear, so you will probably have to look them up in the dictionary, but once you learn it, it makes it easier to remember. Okay, now, it is very frequent, and in fact considered a common rhetorical device, an example of elevated rhetoric, to have both meanings implied at once. What do we mean by this? Well, take one of the most common examples you'll see is this. This is in the news every day. Okay? And it's intentionally for its double meaning. Okay, watan, I think we know watan is a name for a homeland or a nation, but the sense of belonging. Watan is very, very important in the Middle East. Okay, so watan is this. Now this word here, okay, is tautan, or it's far more commonly seen in its other forms, like the participle mustautan, mustautanin, istitan, is a term for Jewish settlement building. Now, mustautana is a Jewish settlement, which we know these are things that are highly controversial, of building Israeli settlements on the West Bank, to try and essentially turn that into Israeli land, to claim the land. Okay, we don't want to get into all the politics, but notice the word. Okay, what are they doing here with this Arabic word? Well, what are our two meanings? Right. So what are you doing? Istautan obviously comes from watan. So what are you trying to do? Well, you're considering something your home, right? You are building, you're building a housing complex on land that you claim you believe is your land. So obviously you consider it your home, but what are you also doing? You're turning it into your home. So there's this double meaning of, well, you're building there because you claim this is already your home, but you're also at the same time trying to turn it into your home. So it's considered, very clever and elegant to have this term. Okay, whatever. But you understand this sort of dual, not only dual meaning, but it's sort of vague, right? It's sort of vague here. But the idea is, either way, you're saying it definitely isn't your watan. Okay, either you consider it your watan, or you're trying to make it your watan. But one thing's for sure, it's not your watan. Okay, anyway, here's another one, and unfortunately a lot of these examples come from politics and the news and security. Okay, Arab. All right, we know what Arab means. Okay, the mustarabun, and I have to use the participle form of this because the verb really isn't used, but mustarabun is a special unit of Israeli intelligence, and what these people do is they infiltrate organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, and so forth. They're Israeli agents, but they can pass themselves off as Arabs. They infiltrate these organizations, but their purpose is very clearly to apprehend or kill members of those organizations. Okay. And so this clever term, which is actually the Israelis themselves came up with this, is mustarab. Now what's happening here? Get it? Now this is clever. And remember, these are people in the Israeli employ who are, so good at being Arabs that they can pass themselves off as Arabs, so they're very good with the language. So what are they doing? Well, obviously, this meaning here is quite clearly implied. That these are Israeli agents who can infiltrate into an organization like Hamas and be considered, as part of the organization. So obviously, they are considered to be Arabs. What are they doing? They're hunting out certain people to assassinate. So they're also seeking targets. So this double meaning is very much intended in that. And so anyway, that's some high-level stuff. But as I say, oftentimes you may have to look up. You may have to look up the meaning. So a word like we've already seen, istahama, is to shower. Well, the root hammam. Hammam is bathroom. Again, you can see the meaning, but it probably wouldn't jump out at you automatically. So, hey, you got to look them up in many cases. All right, so very important, we want to practice the pronunciation. And by pronunciation here, I mean specifically knowing where to put the sukoons or not. Now, as you know, if you switch a short vowel here and there, if you say an I instead of an no one's going to care. But if you put a vowel where there isn't one, and remember, these words are always going to be written like this with no vowels on it, and you always wonder, why don't they put the vowels? How did they know? Well, because of the patterns, they know there's a sukoon here, and there has to be a sukoon here. It couldn't be any other way. Well, you have to know that as well. So, I have here 6 very real and very common measure 10s. In fact, I think all of these come from our media course. You will see them all in there. And what we want to do is practice pronouncing them. Don't do that. Practice pronouncing them. See? Unlike English, you can actually look at these and tell how to pronounce them. Okay, so now obviously, since this is recorded, we're going to have to trust you to do this. So I want you to first go through and just pronounce each one of these yourself. We'll give you a second to do that. Don't fast forward. Okay, ready? Go. Okay, good. So hopefully you got them. The first one, this is pronounced how? Right, istafama. Of course, ista at the beginning, but remember this first root letter becomes like the ending of this syllable here. So istafhama. This one, istakbala. Right. Istarafa. Right. Istaslama. Right. Istahdafa. Istashada. Notice how the sheen becomes an ending consonant, not a beginning consonant. Istashada. Okay, so hopefully you got all of those. Now, again, it's once you learn the pattern. At first, it's kind of hard, but once you learn the pattern, then it becomes easy to plug anything into it because there's nothing else has this same rhythm. Remember, the rhythm's always important. Istafama, istakbala, istaslama, and so forth. Great. I know, you're hooked. You're hooked, right? Okay, let's look at the present tense. Gonna work the same as measure 7. Okay, anyway, so measure 7 and measure 7H. No, measure 7 and 8. Okay, this is live action here. Okay, again, remember all we did was remember in 8, if ta'ala, you had this kesra here, same thing. So otherwise it looks the same as the past tense. Obviously the initial aleph will drop out. Yes, ta. So instead of ista, yestaf illa. Notice we have the kesra. Yestafila. Yestafila. Okay. Good. All right. So here we have the same 6 words, and we've conjugated them for different persons. So the conjugations are all the same. You just have to remember your sukoon here and here. So take a moment to do these. Don't fast forward. You need to do this. Okay, and again, go back and practice these as many times as you have to until you get this rhythm down automatically. Okay, and so this first one, so ana istafem. Again, notice the sukoons, and here this will be him instead of ham. Right, but the sukoon here and sukoon here. Ana istafem, anta تستقبل هو يستعرف نحن نستسلم okay. هم يستضيفون and أنت تستشهدين. And again, count the number of syllables you have. Istafhim, istafhim, not istafahim. Right? Mumtaz. You'll see in a minute why you want to do that. Past tense should be simple. Okay, so here was our basic istaslama. And it's going to have the same number of syllables in all cases. So try this one. Right, very good. So notice it's going to be the same number of syllables in all cases. So here we have, right? What do we have here? Istafamtu, right here. Istaqbalta, right here. Istarafti. Istaslama. Istadafat, istashadu. So you want to practice those just so you get used to the number of syllables and where the sukoons go. Okay. the masdar is formed the same way as we did in these two. Alright, see this live action. Okay, it's formed the same way as in 7 and 8. Okay, so what did we do in those cases? Well, remember we did put a kesra here, which this is, okay, this is not the biggest issue in your life. But here, we inserted an aleph in between the last two letters. Remember we said we'd do that for all these. We're going to do it for our one remaining measure, which is measure 4. So, istif'al. Istif'al. And notice where the emphasis ends up coming here. Istif'al. Alright. Istif'al is the masdar. This is why you want to be careful how you pronounce the sukoons here so that we get the clear emphasis. Alright, if you say istif'al, then it's going to be very confusing. Okay, so again, here we go. Here are those same words. Now, in these cases, we all have the masdars. And how do we make them? Simply by putting an aleph here. So, this one is istifham, right? Same rhythm. Think of the same rhythm. Istiqbal, right? Here. Isti'raf, right? Get that same rhythm. So this one will be istislam, right? Here. Istihdaf, and here istishad. Great. Okay. Mumtaz. This is another great example, by the way. Not to jump, but this is one. This is a word you're going to see a lot in the media, and it's very loaded. Shahada. Shahada means to bear witness, and to be a witness. And it's very much used in a religious term, to be a witness for God. Like shahada is the statement the Muslims say to become a Muslim. Okay, so this word istashhada, istishad, it actually means to be a martyr. Now think what's happening. Remember our two meanings. To seek to be a witness for God and to be considered a witness for God. So that's what they're calling a martyr. See how both meanings come in? It's very loaded term, so it's used a lot for suicide bombers and so forth. Istishad. Okay, so this is a very loaded term, but you see it has both those meanings. Okay, anyway, we're almost done. We're going to wrap things up with a joke. Can you imagine that? I have a little levity here. Now, this is a great one. You want to impress your friends. This is an old Arabic joke, but it's a joke based on the nuances of measure 10. So think how much you're going to impress folks when you tell this joke. I heard this the first time. The prolific Arabic scholar Bernard Lewis, who many of you heard of, he told this joke to a room full of people, and of course everyone burst out laughing, not just because it was a funny joke, but they wanted to make sure that everyone else in the room knew that they got it, right? So anyway, so use this joke, tell this to someone when you're trying to impress them with your Arabic, and they'll be quite impressed that, my goodness, you have a measure 10 joke. So this is what you need to know for the background. Remember, we had this word earlier on, right? Istaghraba. Istaghraba is to be considered strange. Okay? So, what would a mustaghrab be? Well, think about this. The active participle, I don't even need to tell you this, is going to form exactly the same way as it did in measure 7 and the second measure 7 here, which we call measure 8, right? Mustaf'il. Right? Mustafhim, mustaqbil, musta'arif, mustaslim, and so forth. So, okay, istaghrab is someone who is considered strange. What is a mustaghrib? Okay, clearly somebody who is considered to be strange, a mustaghrab. Okay, bear that in mind. Okay, here we have this other root. All right, you know sharq. Sharq is the east. Sharq is, of course, also opposite of the west. Gharb is west. Sharq is east. Now, a word, istashraka, means to seek the east, but a mustashraq is an Orientalist. Now, you've probably heard about these. These are Orientalists. These were Westerners who studied the Middle East and the Orient. They came up with this term for themselves because they needed to have an Arabic term. So a mustashraq, one who seeks the east. Right? Notice it's a different meaning. So in this case, a mustashraq is one who seeks the east. A mustaghrab is one who's considered strange. You'll need to know all that background for this joke. Okay, so the joke is basically this, that a mustashraq, a professor, he goes to Egypt, and he is in Egypt doing research, and he gets in a cab and he starts speaking Arabic to the Cairo cab driver, wanting to impress them. And the cab driver asks him, لماذا تتكلم العربية? Why do you speak Arabic? Okay, and so the professor wants to impress him, and he says, right, لأني مستشرق, right, because I am a مستشرق. أنا أتكلم العربية جيدا لأني مستشرق. And the cab driver says, لا لست مستشرقا أنت مستغرب. Okay, hilarious, isn't it? Remember, if you hear this, you have to break out laughing to indicate that you understand it. Tell this joke to someone, and they will be impressed. My, you have a joke based on the nuances of measure 10. Because what's happening here, right? This person is saying, أنا مستشرق. I am one who seeks the east. All right, I am an Orientalist. You know, these highfalutin scholars of the east. And to the Cairo cab driver, he's, la, anta mustaghrab, you're a weirdo. Right? But notice how we changed from sharq to gharb. We just changed from east to west, and we get him being a weirdo. Why? Because they think someone who comes and digs up antiquities and pyramids is a weirdo. Just trust me. Tell this joke, you will impress your friend. Okay, so we have made it through measure 10. Can you believe it? That's fabulous. On behalf of my good friend here, Dolly, who is taking a rest from her busy day, we want to wish you all the best. Shukran jazilan wa ma salama.